Caitlin Clark come out and say what needed to be said. She stood on business and said, we need to play in games. And y'all that are signed to these other leagues that are compromised, stop playing with the people who are not. Stop playing games. Let's get to it. Ain't nothing to it, but
this is what just happened, and it's larger than it appears. As the WNBA Players Association's first vice president, Kelsey Plum recently adopted a strong, unyielding position in the ongoing contract discussions. However, this moment is unstable because of the timing. The league's biggest attraction, Caitlin Clark, gave a totally different speech at USA basketball camp in North Carolina just hours before. Clark stressed that players must be on the court this season and publicly called on all sides to reach a compromise. In a direct response, Plum stated that negotiations have been quite frustrating and that the two parties are still far from reaching a consensus. Two competing visions, two stars. Here's the twist that makes everything different. One of them is the owner of a rival league. An already tense stalemate is made much more complex by that detail.
Response is in this. This is crazy, man. Like, you're signed to Unrivaled. You got equity in Unrivaled. Like, y'all are somewhat compromised on the situation to a degree, even if you're it's just weird, man. It's a little weird. Y'all on the board, but y'all got equity in the competitor leagues. It's all a little conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Here it says, Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark said Friday that while WNBA players will fight for everything we deserve during their current round of collective bargaining agreement negotiations.
Pay close attention because Caitlin Clark's statement at Duke University on January 10, 2025, was well-planned and carried significant weight. Fans want basketball on the floor, and Clark made it very evident that all parties must be flexible in order to reach an agreement. This was hardly lighthearted criticism. This was the league's face coming forward. The same player that attracted 3.2 million viewers for WNBA broadcasts the previous season made the decision to openly put pressure on her own union rather than ownership. That in and of itself says a lot. Additionally, Clark cautioned that the negotiations are about to approach a crucial stage. That's a nice way of saying time is almost gone. The window of opportunity to address issue is rapidly closing, and delays are no longer benign. This is where things start to become awkward. The deadline was rescheduled until January 19th because the league and the players' union had already missed it previously. 6 more weeks were added after the December deadline by that extension, but half of that buffer has already been used. There was no agreement for 3 weeks. Progress has stagnated, according to Kelsey Plum's own remarks. It is risk rather than strategy when you are running out of runway after missing the first deadline.
An extension of the current CBA through January 9, 2026, as both sides continue to work toward a new deal. But questions persist on whether both sides will come to an agreement by then, or even whether a work stoppage could be on the horizon. Now, this is what Kelsey Plum had to say. Kelsey Plum, first vice president of the WNBPA, said at Camp Friday that the talks have been a little disheartening.
The league has formally presented its most recent proposal. Additionally, it appears dramatic on the surface. The maximum pay would increase to a guaranteed $1 million baseline in 2026 under the new deal. Top players might conceivably make $1.2 million or more a season when expected revenue sharing is taken into account. Simultaneously, the total wage ceiling would raise to $5 million in 2026, with built-in increases directly linked to league revenue growth. The difference between then and the current situation is startling. The current maximum wage is somewhat less than $242,000. The income cap for outstanding players would be more than quadrupled under this plan, marking an unprecedented change in WNBA compensation history. However, this is where the talks come to a standstill. The players' union is not solely concerned about salary headlines. They are advocating for a total overhaul of the system. This entails a revised revenue-sharing scheme, legally binding requirements for team facilities and personnel, and greatly increased benefit packages. Trade-offs are the issue of contention. The league intends to cut or remove other benefits, such as housing stipends and car allowances, in order to pay for the million-dollar salary. The connection is unyielding. They won't trade their current benefits for more money. They have a clear position. They don't want a reorganization. They want everything.
Authorities are transforming the league's salary structure and revenue sharing system, introducing standards for team facilities and staffing and garnering more robust benefits. The league has said it wants to substantially increase players' salary and other cost commitments, while also incentivizing owners to continue to invest in operating the business and building sustained profitability. The most recently reported league proposal.
This is the point at which Caitlin Clark's viewpoint obviously deviates from the union's strict approach. She is not actively involved in the decision-making process and is not a member of the negotiating committee. Players like Lexi Hull, Lexi Brown, and Aaliyah Boston represent the Indiana Fever in the union, while Brianna Stewart is the union's treasurer. Although she is not present, Clark receives briefings to stay informed. From creating suggestions or formulating requests, she has freedom that other people don't have because of that distance. She can express what many players think in private, but she won't acknowledge it in public. Clark has distinguished between confrontations that merit escalation and situations in which compromise is required. Her message focused on time and leverage rather than giving up. She stated unequivocally that participants should safeguard their earnings. However, she also underlined that both parties must be adaptable for growth to occur. That isn't a sign of weakness. It's strategic awareness, since there is a genuine danger involved in pushing for everything with no room for negotiation. There won't be a season if negotiations fail. Without a season, there would be no games, no exposure, and no development. And if that occurs, the momentum created in 2024 vanishes in an instant.
That's what that line should have said. They are looking to capitalize off of Caitlin Clark, because if there was no Caitlin Clark in this league, they would have already agreed on a deal. Trust and believe, they wouldn't be doing all this hard negotiating and this and that if there was no Caitlin Clark that came in this league and brought the numbers, brought the viewership, brought everything. Simple as that. Simple as that. Here it says, what I'm proud of is that we play with a group of women that are united and we're standing on something, Plum said. Chicago Sky All-Star Angel Reese echoed that sentiment. I think everybody's really intentional about what we want. I think the players in WNBA have done.
This is what Caitlin Clark appears to notice that a lot of people are missing. It wasn't only a successful year for the WNBA. There was a historic one. Furthermore, that increase was not an accident. It was mostly motivated by Clark's arrival. Attendance for the Indiana Fever didn't simply increase. It blew up. Television ratings broke all prior records. Sales of products, tickets, and jerseys reached previously unheard of heights. Once hesitant sponsors flooded in, eager to join the movement. This was not the outcome of consistent, incremental growth. Millions of casual sports fans who had not previously paid attention to the WNBA were reintroduced to it through a cultural shockwave, a moment, and a lightning strike. This reality is even hinted to in official documentation, which highlights the league's aim to profit from recent expansion. However, everyone knows what drove that development in 2024, notwithstanding the formal terminology. Clark is also aware of something more awkward. These kinds of moments are delicate. They are short-lived. Those new fans won't stick around if there isn't a 2025 season. They'll turn their focus elsewhere, and the buzz vanishes nearly as fast as it came. It is quite difficult to regain momentum after it has been lost. Clark's admonition becomes crucial at that point. For a lot of participants, this might be their best opportunity to make genuinely revolutionary profits. In essence, she's saying, don't let it slip away by refusing to compromise at all. However, there is opposition to that message. In a public statement, Kelsey Plum emphasized togetherness and principles, indicating that players are ready to stand their position. That position was reinforced by Angel Ree, who emphasized consideration and group determination. It's traditional union jargon: solid, cohesive, and measured. When a group thinks a confrontation might be inevitable, you hear this kind of messaging.
Number one, pick in women's basketball sensation has called this the biggest moment the WNBA has seen, making it all the more important that we find a way to play this next season. A work stoppage could emerge if the owners opt to lock out the players or the players opt to strike. I think there are different things that we can find ways to say no. We certainly deserve that, and we're not going to compromise on that. And there are other things we can probably compromise on. You want to understand both sides and be respectful of both sides, but at the end of the day, come to a compromise. Caitlin Clark is the.
Let's now talk about the difficult reality that is rarely discussed in public. In her negotiations with the WNBA, Kelsey Plum is more than just a union leader. She has significant investments elsewhere as well. Plum is one of the co-founders of Unrivaled, a brand new 3-on-3 league that will debut in Miami. She signed a multi-million-dollar contract with the league, owns stock in it, and is a member of its board of directors. That's important because a very obvious scenario is emerging as WNBA discussions continue and the likelihood of a losing 2025 season intensifies. Suddenly, players would require a different location to play, earn, and remain visible. It's unparalleled to be in the ideal position to profit from that chaos. It's not a coincidence. Leverage is that. When people discuss conflicts of interest, they are referring to this. Plum is negotiating on behalf of other WNBA players. However, if such negotiations fail and athletes look for other leagues, she will personally benefit. She's not by herself, either. In addition to being the union's treasurer and actively participating in the negotiations, Breanna Stewart is a co-founder of Unrivaled with substantial equity. The same dual duty is held by Nafisa Collier. These three have significant financial stakes in a direct rival to the WNBA and are key players influencing union policy. When assessing their public stance and readiness to push talks to the limit, that background is important. In contrast, Caitlin Clark is working from an entirely different viewpoint. She doesn't hold any shares in Unrivaled. She is not locked into any other league or signed to Athletes Unlimited. Almost all of her financial potential, visibility, and long-term brand worth depend on the WNBA's continued expansion. Clark won't have a safety net if the WNBA doesn't play in 2025. She misses out on a whole season of her best-earning window, which she will never get back. There isn't a backup league with guaranteed funding. Her perspective isn't influenced by leverage games or other choices because of this. For her to be successful, she needs the WNBA. There isn't a similar route for Caitlin Clark. Her future and the league's success are closely linked, and this fact essentially separates her viewpoint from that of the union leadership at the table. As the negotiations approach a breaking point, this is the current situation. January 19, 2025 is the official hard deadline. Although that date is now less than 2 weeks away, a deal must really be reached far earlier. Teams require time to get ready. Front desks require clarity. Free agency typically starts in February, while training camps typically open in April. The 2025 season is in grave jeopardy if an agreement is not reached by late January or early February. And at the moment, every indication points to major problems. Both parties' reports show that there is still a significant divide between the union and the league. There is still a lot of territory to cross, even according to union leadership. Here, Caitlin Clark has taken on a role that few anticipated. She has gone public, pleading with both parties to reduce hostilities and look for a middle ground. She emphasizes that getting players on the court this season is crucial and frames this as the most significant turning point in WNBA history. Unusually open, Clark has stated that she wants to avoid a lockout or a strike at all costs and that it is definitely a possibility if negotiations break down. This type of messaging is intentional. It's computed. It's leadership. She is presenting herself as the calm, practical voice attempting to prevent the league from blowing up at its most important time. On the other hand, Kelsey Plum is moving in the other direction. Her remarks in public continue to highlight how discouraging and frozen the conversations have been. She keeps emphasizing how far apart the two sides still are. She is simultaneously mobilizing players around solidarity, determination, and upholding fundamental demands. That language is important. It's not the tone of someone setting the stage for a compromise. When parties are preparing for conflict, you may hear this tone. The goal of one camp is to prevent disaster. The other seems to be getting ready for a confrontation. The next few weeks will determine whether the WNBA advances or blows everything up at the peak of its momentum, since time is running short.